Okay, hey, we're to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a really special review for you guys from the brand LaMotte Watch Company. A little bit about them. They're actually a family company based in California that was born out of their mutual passion for great wristwatches and the love of locally produced products. Their watches are designed, engineered, and assembled in the United States, including the automatic movements, which is something that I think makes this watch very, very special. Now, in terms of the type of watch, I consider this an everyday watch. Some key common characteristics and design, when you're looking for something that is versatile enough to be worn every day, it's really just going to be all about that blend of both sporty and dressy attributes. Again, that is key to versatility. And then when you have a color palette like this, which is quite muted, but still has a nice pop in terms of the blue, in terms of the 3D kind of nature of those applied numerals, I say you have something that's a really, really cool combination. This is actually their Balboa automatic, and they pretty much created this as a versatile USA built everyday piece that even has a USA assembled movement, which uses both domestic and foreign sourced components, which is why it actually doesn't qualify to be fully USA made. But as a proud American brand, they really want to do their part to support the resurgence of American watchmaking. This is not a cheap piece by any means, but it's definitely very affordable considering, obviously if you value those qualities of it being built here in the USA. This goes for $895 direct, and I think it's actually a really good value when you check it out. So although I don't think it's a perfect watch, I mean, as a first offering, I'm pretty darn impressed. So with that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys, now getting into the numbers here, the specs, let's get into that. So it actually has a 38.7 millimeter diameter, which for this type of watch, right, not a dive watch, just kind of an everyday versatile piece, I think that's outstanding. 38.7, very nice, a little bit under 39. And again, for those of you who might be thinking this is pretty large because you're more of a 36 type of person, this definitely is not meant to be kind of on that vintage size, but it's also not some bulky modern type of sizing either. With the way that they do the dial, with the way that they do that outer track there, what the nice thing that happens is it actually brings the focus towards the center of the dial, making the dial a bit smaller visually. Now, in terms of the thickness, this is not a super thin watch at 12 millimeters. It's not overly thick either. I think, again, for that everyday space, 12 millimeters isn't bad. A 10 would have been better. And I think ultimately, those are room for improvement for future iterations. Now, the lug to lug is 48 millimeters, and you can see it does have a nice little drape there in terms of the lugs and the way that they wrap. Very simple case finishing in terms of being brushed and polished. But I will say the brushing does look quite good. Look at that bezel. That definitely is above the typical kind of casework that you would see from more bargain related pieces. And again, this isn't a bargain related piece, but because of its simplistic design, some people might draw some comparisons. No, it doesn't have a bunch of chamfered edges. It doesn't have a bunch of undercuts or anything. There's a lot of tricks that were omitted from this. It's definitely a very simple, very clean, very classic piece, and it really keeps the focus on the dial and of course on this movement, and it's it's an Americron movement, and the fact that they have gone to great lengths to keep this as American made as possible, at least within this iteration. Of course, they're always working towards higher goals, and the success of this is going to be what dictates the speed of success for future growth. Now, of course, 316L stainless steel, brushed and polished. The sapphire is flat and very nice, as you can see, very clear viewing angles. I'm not seeing, a lot of, hey, this is hard to get. Of course, if I do it, it's reflecting right off the studio light there, it's going to be harder to read. But as you look at it now, you can see it's actually very, very easy. So quite legible, and that ties in again to that everyday versatility, everyday wearability, and functionality. So that bezel is fixed, really nicely brushed. You do get a push-pull crown, which is unsigned, which, some people are going to want a signed crown, but it's like, what would their signed crown look like? Would it be an L? Would it be an M? Would it be an LM? Who knows? But I think as long as it's nicely executed, which you can see here, it's very clean and very sharp, and in terms of the tactile engagement, very nice. And the winding action on this Americron movement is actually very nice too. So flipping the watch over back to this lovely new movement, is you're going to see that this is the automatic Americron 7A20, which is assembled and regulated in Arizona. It has a 40-hour power reserve and beats at 4 hertz, which is going to be 28,800 vibrations per hour. Now, this is a new design. It's not a clone of like an ETA movement or anything like that, and it's actually fully serviceable by any traditional watchmaker, right? So there's nothing. There's nothing like too special about it in terms of the serviceability, which is something that's great, right? Which means you can take it to a local watchmaker, and if you want to tune it up, you can, and they will be able to, which I can't say for all movements that are in today's watches, because a lot of brands are definitely focusing more on getting your stuff serviced by them so that they can have that kind of long-term revenue. In terms of some of the specs here, this actually has, again, a maximum deviation. That's not the average deviation. Maximum of plus 30 to minus 10. And that's, that's right in line with, let's say, a base ETA 2824. So, and people love those. People spend tons of money on those, even unregulated ones, right? Of course, if you're getting COSC, you're going to pay a little bit more, but you can't COSC this can't be a chronometer because it's made in the US. It's not made in, it's not Swiss made in terms of the movement. So, I did speak to the owner of the brand, and they said typically these run way better, of course, than that. But in terms of what they can guarantee, in terms of what they're going to be able to specify for any type of warranty work, then, it's that maximum deviation. So in terms of the case back, also a nice feature is that it is also sapphire, and it displays nicely. And although there's not a lot of ornate details or decorations on this movement, it's still a very sound movement, and it is nice and automatic and mechanical. So I mean, a lot of the times, you'll see stuff like an Oris that has, all they do is paint the rotor on a Sellita SW200, and they'll charge you a couple $1,000 for that. So I have no problem with a more kind of working tool finish type here. I think it would be cool to have some options for some in-house decoration, if they did some perlage or any type of striping or anything like that. I think that would be very cool, but of course that would be at an additional cost, so maybe they can do some types of limited runs. But this is really already kind of small batch production, which is, hey, that's impressive, right? Because small batch production is expensive. This isn't some mass produced piece that they're ordering in MOQs of 200, 300, 400 from out of factories in China. Again, this is all sourced locally in terms of the assembly, the regulation, and everything like that, which I think is great. So Getting into this dial, it is a brushed steel dial with applied numerals. There's no date. Looks great still, though. You know, I think a lot of folks do enjoy that really nice uniformity and balance and symmetry that comes with a no date movement and dial layout. I think that looks fantastic. The polished and loomed handset look right at home. You know, again, they went for a very clean look. The loom on here is Super Luminova X1, so very nice. It's going to glow blue. You guys are going to be pretty impressed with this once we get this into the low light transition and the loom portion. The water resistance, 10 atmospheres or 100 meters, I think is great. Very standard. It would be cool if it could go a little deeper, if it had a screw down crown, but 100 meters for an everyday watch, just perfect. And then in terms of the lug width, hey, this is going to be quite versatile at 20 millimeters, guys. This does have a nice hand-stitched gray leather strap with a moisture-resistant lining that tapers down to 18 millimeters. And you can see all the information in terms of LaMotte Watchco signing, and then the lengths of each as well as the lug width is all set there. So with that said, let's actually get this piece on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay guys, as you can see on my 7.5-inch wrist, this wears just beautifully. Check that out. Of course, if I do get my wrist a bit too close to the camera, it's going to appear a bit larger due to some perspective distortion. So what I'll do is I'll keep my wrist nice and low and then just tighten up the frame here so you guys can still get a detailed look while of course having more of a you know, a truer aspect ratio of how this might sit on your own wrist. And although my wrist is a little bit larger at 7.5 inches, it is actually quite round, as you can see. So it's not like I have some big, flat, wide wrist that's going to accommodate to every single watch. So I also have to be pretty conscious of the way things are sitting and if something appears oversized or undersized. And I think this really hits a sweet spot. As you can see, it is going to be on the thicker side, but by no means bulbous or you know, overly thick or anything like that. I think it's right there at 12 millimeters. You know, it's completely fine. I'm glad that they did do a flat crystal since it is on the thicker side, and I think it did pay off in terms of keeping that profile really nice. And man, look at the colors, the finishing, just the 3D nature of those applied numeral indices, and it's just really, really nice and clean. I dig the color palette, guys. I wear a lot of blues and grays, so stuff like this is just right up my alley. And you can see, guys, that is just quite handsome. Again, in terms of the complexity of the case, there's not too much going on, but the finishing in terms of that brushing is definitely quite nice. Not industrial, definitely a bit of a higher level, higher attention to detail, and it pops really because of that dial, which is really, really nice and a real standout for this piece. I think it definitely has the look of an American watch. It definitely, you know, resonates within that kind of Americana vibe. So I'm glad that that just thematically all comes together in a way that is really pleasing to the eye. So with that said, let's get this off the wrist, set up for some loom shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. Yes, now that is some loom, guys. So legible, so crisp, so bright. Definitely nice high definition edges there. Nothing looks uneven, muddled, or blurry. And again, that's just that extra level of attention to detail that you just come to expect and appreciate when there is somebody that's really trying something new. And I like that you can feel the effort here. And although again, it's not some complex luxury timepiece, I think we can all get a bit desensitized to it because there are brands like, let's say, Grand Seiko or Monta or Helios, you know, at every kind of price point that really focus on those fine details and really just exude that air of perfection that sometimes a more simple layout like this might go underappreciated. So I'm really happy to be able to share with you. But one thing, of course, I always like to work in is a bit of low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it is nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting. So maybe include some harsh lighting here, high contrast that might expose any types of factory defects, but you're just going to see really clean execution. And of course, this is a review sample that has gone out to a couple different places. I think they do brush and polish them up a little bit from time to time, but you can still see there's still a little bit of wear and tear, which is completely to be expected and probably more helpful for you guys, because if you own this piece, it probably wouldn't be in pristine condition, right? You would wear it, you would enjoy it, it would pick up a little bit of that, wabi sabi in terms of telling the story through those earned marks, right? Those little scuffs, scratches, dings, and hairlines. But man, I have to say I'm really impressed with just how potent the loom is, as well as just the great design layout. Look at how much contrast you're still getting from the dial and the indices, even at, again, all these mixed lighting conditions. It just kind of finds a way to be readable and legible. Look at that, the dial. That is just cool. I dig it. All right, guys, so closing thoughts on the wrist: robust yet refined. That's probably the best way to describe it. Yes, I would have preferred thinner, and I wouldn't necessarily consider this overly thick for the type of watch, since this is more on the casual side. This is definitely more of that jeans and a flannel type of setup, versus being something that's like ultra svelte and dressy, mid-century, with a blingy bracelet or something like that. Like, this is definitely meant to be that everyday type of watch, and I think they really nail it. So also, I guess, and when you are thinking about the visual weight here, the taller bezel does add some really great depth to that dial, and the 3D numerals they pop, guys. They really do. So I have to say that there are, again, some trade-offs. You do want to be able to frame that gorgeous dial in the best way that you can, and with that additional depth from the bezel in terms of the additional height that it adds, I think it just adds a really cool effect, which balances everything out again and makes you focus on what is really winning here, which is the dial and those applied numerals, which I think are just so attractive. Now, in terms of model variants, this is actually just available on various strap options at this point, so definitely check the site links for more. I'm looking forward to seeing what other options and updates they eventually offer, but right now it's pretty much this watch with different strap options if you were to order this. For me, guys, if I summarize this to my bottom line, I'm just really impressed with this one, especially as, again, an initial offering. This is the first I've heard about this brand, and they caught my eye. They really did. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what they come out with next. Of course, I would love to see this thinned out, maybe more complex case finishes, and just a more complex design. But I do dig this more simple kind of sedate layout that they have right now. I can absolutely appreciate it, but I do think adding a bit of complexity would probably help this stand out more, which I think at this point you kind of got to swing for the fences when you have something this good, and I think a lot of people will be pleased with this one. So really great in terms of balancing out something that is very clean, very simple. Could it be more complex? Could it be more challenging? Could they have made this harder? you know, to produce, and therefore made it, you know, seem a bit more luxurious. Of course they could have, but then that also would have driven up the price. So at under $1,000, under 900 even, I think this is actually a really cool watch for those of you that can appreciate those US, you know, assembled and sourced elements. So with that said, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, please hit like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.